I sit here in this small, dark room, staring down at my thin, fragile hands, trying to recount a story most people would never believe could happen in the modern world. It's the story of how I was once Emily Campbell, the most sought-after supermodel in New York, and how I became a living ghost. Back then, when I was 22, I was at the height of my fame. Prestigious magazines like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar all wanted my photos. That dazzling career came to an abrupt end the day I met Marcus Ashford III, the sole heir to Ashford Corporation, a massive real estate empire. He walked into my life like a prince from a fairy tale, with gestures so tender they made my heart flutter. It wasn't luxury gifts. No, it was thoughtful presence that held meaning only the two of us understood. I fell for him so deeply that I abandoned everything: million-dollar contracts and the brilliant career I had worked so hard to build. I believed love and family would bring me a happiness far greater than fame ever could. Our wedding took place just a few months after we started dating. Over 500 guests, white roses imported from overseas, and a wedding gown worth $700,000. When he slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me gently, Marcus whispered, "You will be my most perfect work of art, my living symbol of success." I was foolish enough to feel happy when I heard that, never realizing I had just stepped into a haunted castle. During the first months after the wedding, Marcus was still the gentleman I loved. But little by little, I began to notice small shifts in his behavior. He started commenting on my weight. Marcus insisted that I maintain the most perfect beauty possible. At first, I thought he cared about my health. It made sense, after all. What man wouldn't feel proud having a beautiful woman by his side? And we often attended high-end galas together to meet his clients. Marcus emphasized, "My reputation depends on how you look. Everything people see has to be perfect, exactly the way I want it." He whispered each word slowly into my ear. Then he introduced rules. I was only allowed to eat between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., just a 3-hour window each day. Every meal had to be weighed and measured precisely, never exceeding 200 calories. I had to photograph everything I ate and send the photos to Marcus for approval. I wasn't allowed to eat anything white: rice, bread, milk, cheese, because Marcus said they make the stomach expand. Water was the only thing I was permitted to drink, and even that was limited to 1 liter a day. I had to count every bite and chew at least 30 times before swallowing. No fruit because it had too much natural sugar. No leafy greens because they cause bloating. Salt and seasonings were completely banned because Marcus believed they made the body retain water. He bought a scale and placed it right next to our bed, forcing me to weigh myself every morning. My weight had to be under 95 pounds, a ridiculous number for someone nearly 6 feet tall. I began to dread stepping on that scale. My heart raced, my limbs trembled. I held my breath as the needle wavered. If I gained even a single pound, Marcus would stare at me with cold disappointment. That look made shame burn through me. I started eating less. From 3 meals a day to 2, then to 1. I drank water to feel full, chewed on ice to trick my stomach. The initial hunger pains were torture, but eventually they became familiar, almost comforting, a reminder that I was doing it right. Old friends called to check on me, but Marcus discouraged me from seeing them. He said I needed to focus on our family, on being the perfect wife. Gradually, I cut off all contact with the outside world. The luxurious Manhattan penthouse became my prison. I remember the day I looked in the mirror for the first time after 6 months of marriage. My cheeks were hollow, my cheekbones jutting like knives, my eyes sunken deep into their sockets. I looked like a skeleton wrapped in skin. But Marcus told me I had never been more beautiful. He hugged me, and I could feel my ribs pressing into his chest. I still didn't recognize the warning signs. Instead, I felt proud, happy with his praise. 9 months after our wedding, I was down to 80 pounds. My hair fell out in clumps. My skin felt as thin as paper. I was always cold, even during New York's scorching summer days. I began fainting. The first time was at a supermarket. I was standing in front of the fruit display when the world spun and I collapsed. Marcus insisted it was just my body adjusting. He refused to let me see a doctor. Instead, he hired a personal trainer to come to the penthouse every day. Those workouts were torture. My frail body couldn't handle them. Then I found out Marcus was cheating. I saw the messages on his phone from a young woman named Ashley. In those texts, he described her as vibrant and radiant, while calling me a walking corpse. It felt like a knife had been driven straight through my heart. I finally realized I had become a ghost, a grotesque, twisted version of the Emily who once shined so brightly. The final blow came when I discovered Marcus had transferred all our shared assets into his name and the company's. When I confronted him, he simply shrugged and said I had no value left. In that moment, I shattered completely. When I was beautiful and famous, Marcus felt he had conquered something other men coveted. But after he starved me down to skin and bones, he destroyed the very possession he had once bragged about. That night, I sat before the vanity mirror in our bedroom, examining every detail of myself. I had let Marcus transform me into a monster. The last time I walked out of that penthouse was at 3 a.m. on a September morning. I carried only a small handbag with a few baggy clothes and some loose change I found in a drawer. I weighed 75 pounds, barely able to walk with the tiny bag slung over my shoulder. The divorce process dragged on for 2 years, handled by expensive lawyers I could barely afford. Marcus used every tactic imaginable to prolong the case, knowing I had no money left to fight. I lived in run-down apartments in Queens during that time. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Every reflection reminded me of the Emily I once was. Eventually, after 2 long years, I won the case and received a portion of the assets. But no amount of money could buy back the health or youth I had lost. My body was damaged beyond repair. Doctors told me I might never have children, that my bones were as brittle as glass, and my heart as weak as that of an 80-year-old woman. Now, sitting in this small apartment in Brooklyn, I have learned to live with the ghost that haunts me. My story doesn't have a Hollywood happy ending. I am still fighting every day to reclaim myself and rebuild my life. I'm telling this story not for sympathy, but to warn other young women. Never let someone turn you into the ghost of your own life. Never let love become a curse. This story was inspired by a real case. Ngu Chi Hong, a famous Hong Kong supermodel, gave up her thriving career at age 22 to marry Quoc Vinh Tuan, the wealthy heir to the Vinh An Corporation. What began as a fairy tale marriage quickly spiraled into a nightmare. Within a few years, she appeared in public gaunt and emaciated, weighing only around 20 to 22 kilograms, looking like a walking skeleton. The main cause was believed to be her husband's extreme control, especially his demand that she maintain a weight under 45 kilograms, which pushed her into severe, dangerous dieting. He reportedly cheated on her and was financially irresponsible, leaving her to struggle with illness and mounting medical bills. The severe health consequences and emotional collapse eventually led to their separation and divorce in 2009.
My name is Michael Collins, and I live in Tampa, Florida. I hate Florida summers. The humid heat feels like a wet blanket wrapped around your body, making my apartment feel like an oven, even with the AC blasting at full power. That night, the night everything ended, was no different. I walked into the apartment after my shift at the Clearwater Casino. The faint smell of whiskey lingered in the air. Rebecca, the woman I'd lived with for 2 years, a nurse at Tampa General Hospital, had already started drinking before I got home. Our relationship wasn't love. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Both of us carried wounds from our pasts. I had my uncontrollable anger and the bottle of whiskey that never left my bedside. She had bruises left behind by old relationships and a deep, gnawing fear of being abandoned. 2 broken people trying to form something whole, only to hurt each other more. 2 weeks earlier, drunk and angry, I shoved Rebecca into the wall. The impact knocked over the table lamp, shattering it. A piece of glass cut her arm, leaving a long scar. I apologized 1,000 times, swore it would never happen again. But Rebecca's eyes had already turned cold. Everything between us was dying. That evening, we sat on the couch drinking and watching some mindless TV show. My head was foggy from alcohol and exhaustion. My phone vibrated. It was Jack, my last real friend. I stepped out onto the balcony to answer. His voice was tense. He told me he'd seen Rebecca at a bar the night before. She had been extremely drunk and had hinted at threats, revenge, and some disturbing plans. Jack warned me to leave the apartment immediately, but I ignored him. I went back inside. Rebecca was sitting there with a strange smile on her lips. A large black suitcase was sitting in the middle of the floor. Rebecca introduced a game, a challenge. I was supposed to climb into the suitcase and see how long I could last before begging to be let out. In my drunken haze, it sounded like a weird, harmless dare. Why not? We'd done crazier things before. I remember the feeling of climbing inside that suitcase. At first, there was a childish thrill, like hiding in a secret cave. It was big enough for me to curl up in, knees pulled tight to my chest. Rebecca leaned over me, smiling softly. When I heard the zipper closing, I was still laughing. Darkness swallowed me, with only a sliver of light slipping through the seam. The cramped, humid space quickly filled with my own hot breath, sweat dripping down my back. The first few minutes passed quietly. I heard Rebecca moving around. She was getting more ice for her drink. I asked when she would let me out. No answer. I assumed she was messing with me. But after a few more minutes, I started feeling genuinely uneasy. The air felt thick, suffocating. The heat pressed in on me. Nausea rose in my throat. I told her to open it. Still no answer. Instead, I heard a quiet laugh and the click of a phone camera. Around minute 9 or 10, real fear seeped in. The suitcase suddenly felt less like a hiding spot and more like a coffin. Every breath felt harder. The air was disappearing. I began begging. That's when Rebecca finally spoke, her voice cold and distant. She said this was the lesson I deserved for everything I'd done to her. The bruises, the insults, the broken lamp, the late-night ER trip. I finally understood. This wasn't a game. I pounded on the walls of the suitcase, kicked, threw my weight at it, anything to break out. But the thick fabric held, and being curled in a helpless position meant I had no leverage. The noise I made wasn't loud enough, and our apartment was always noisy from our fights. No neighbor would find anything unusual. 20 minutes later, my body started to seize. Panic made my breathing faster, burning through what little oxygen I had left. My fingers went numb. My head spun. I didn't have the strength to pound anymore. I heard Rebecca turn on the TV, loud enough to drown out the faint sounds I was still making. She even talked to someone on the phone, her voice calm, casual, like nothing was happening. Time became distorted. My brain tried to recall how long a person could survive with no air. 3 minutes? 5? I heard Rebecca moving around the apartment, then silence. Did she go to bed? While I was suffocating a few feet away? My last breath was a soft exhale. Death wasn't as terrifying as I thought. It felt like slipping into sleep after an unbearably long day. The only difference was that I would never wake up again. Death wasn't the end of my story. No, only the middle chapter. I watched Rebecca the next morning as she woke up. Her eyes widened as she remembered. She walked toward the suitcase with hesitant steps and unzipped it with trembling hands. Her scream caught in her throat when she saw my twisted, blue, rigid body. After her panic subsided, a strange calm washed over her. Rebecca started planning, wiping fingerprints, deleting messages, preparing a story about a drunk hide-and-seek game gone wrong. She dialed 911 with a shaking, tearful voice. Detective Daniels was the first to question her version. He noticed the bruises on my body, but fate stepped in. Rebecca's phone. She had forgotten to delete the videos and photos she took of me inside the suitcase. The undeniable proof of an intentional killing. The trial began 6 months later. Rebecca wore a Navy suit, keeping up the facade of a tragic accident. But when the evidence was shown, her composure shattered. On the final day, Rebecca confessed. Not out of guilt, but as a legal strategy. She talked about our violent, toxic history, the wounds I had caused her. She claimed she just lost control. The jury didn't buy it. Rebecca Sloan was sentenced to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder. Looking back on my life, I see all the terrible choices that led me into that suitcase. The drinking, the rage, the violence, the toxic relationship I didn't have the courage to leave. I wasn't an innocent victim. I died in a suitcase, a coffin I chose long before I climbed into it. And the worst part is, a small part of me still wonders, would she have opened it if I begged harder? This story was inspired by a real case. In the Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres case, Jorge Torres was found dead inside a suitcase in Orange County, Florida. His girlfriend, Sarah Boone, 45, was taken into questioning. At first, Sarah couldn't explain Jorge's injuries, but later admitted their relationship involved mutual violence, including Jorge hitting her weeks earlier. A video found on Sarah's phone showed her next to the suitcase, while Jorge said he couldn't breathe. Sarah responded coldly and laughed. She claimed it was a drunken hide-and-seek game and that she fell asleep while he was inside. She faces second-degree murder charges and could receive up to 16 years in prison if convicted. I'm David, 29, a software engineer in San Francisco. My life was usually pretty boring, just lines of code and deadlines, until I met Emma. We were together for 3 years, and I thought I'd found my partner for life. We were even talking about getting married next year. But everything fell apart with a short text message last week. I need some time to think. Don't contact me until I feel ready. She didn't explain or give me any specific reason, just one line of text, and then she blocked all my calls and messages. The past few days, I've been lost, haunted by Emma's memory and the question of why. Everything felt heavy and suffocating. I decided to take some time off work, spend a few days by the coast to clear my head. It was evening, and I was driving on a lonely, winding mountain road by the ocean. All I could hear was the distant sound of waves and the wind blowing through the car window. Suddenly, I saw a figure standing next to a broken-down car. As I got closer, I saw it was a young woman, her eyes red like she'd been crying. She waved her hand desperately, asking for a ride. I stopped the car. She climbed into the back seat and introduced herself as Mina. Her car had broken down, and she wanted me to take her to the gas station ahead for help. We started driving, and the first few minutes passed in silence. I glanced at Mina in the rearview mirror. She was huddled, her eyes looking out the window. Mina slowly began to tell me about her own love life. Her voice was choked up when she mentioned the man she'd loved from the moment she met him. 2 years of devotion, only to find out today that he had betrayed her in the most painful way. I saw that scumbag kissing my best friend right in the car. I felt a sense of empathy for Mina. The atmosphere in the car suddenly changed. Mina wasn't crying anymore. She sat up straight, her eyes fixed forward. She spoke with a chilling emphasis on every word as she described witnessing the betrayal firsthand. Mina paused for a few seconds, letting out a weary sigh. Then her tone shifted completely. She said she charged straight into the car, pulled out a knife, and gave that awful couple several repeated stabs. Mina let out a deeply satisfied laugh as she described the scene with bright red blood and chaotic screams. My body felt paralyzed as I listened. I slammed on the brakes and turned to look at Mina, completely stunned. Mina laughed louder, a maniacal laugh that gave me goosebumps. Then she abruptly looked at me, her eyes wide. "How's my story? Do you think I did the right thing?" My throat felt dry. I couldn't utter a word. I didn't dare look at Mina again, focusing only on the road ahead, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The very next second, Mina suddenly dropped her head and started to sob uncontrollably. She mumbled that it was all just her imagination and that she hadn't actually done anything. I froze again for a few seconds, then breathed a sigh of relief, though the confusion still clung to me. I tried to advise her to verify the situation and talk honestly with her boyfriend. At least you can still meet him and ask him why you're not in a helpless situation like I am. As soon as I finished speaking, Mina suddenly lifted her head, her eyes aggressive. She pulled out a folding knife, the tip pointing directly at my side. "Turn the car around right now. I have to make sure they're dead." Mina's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. My heart was pounding like a drum. I was drenched in cold sweat. My head was spinning with all the conflicting information from just a few short minutes. So she had actually done it, and I was sitting next to a genuine psycho. With no other choice, I was forced to turn the car around. When we got back to the original spot, Mina demanded I get out of the car to confirm her suspicion. Stepping out of the car on shaky legs, I followed her to the bushes by the roadside. The scene before me made me shudder. A man and a woman lying motionless in the thicket, their bodies covered in bloody knife wounds. The woman was lying on her side, eyes wide open, staring into space. She surely hadn't made it. But I noticed the man was still faintly breathing, his chest rising and falling slightly. Are they dead? Mina's emotionless voice sounded behind me. In my fear and my desperate desire to save the life that was still there, I lied that he was dead, hoping it would satisfy Mina and make her leave. But she wasn't easily fooled. Mina stepped closer, observed carefully, and discovered the truth. Her eyes widened with rage. "You lied!" she screamed, pointing the knife straight at me, ready to rush in and finish both the man and me off. She advanced toward the unconscious man first, yelling curses about the betrayal. Seeing the urgency of the situation, I lunged after her. If I didn't fight back now, both the man and I would die. The distance between us closed as Mina swung the knife. My hand grabbed her wrist. Mina roared and struggled with the strength of a madwoman. But fortunately, her strength was nothing compared to my will to survive. In a decisive moment, I forcefully twisted Mina's knife-holding wrist until she cried out in pain, and the knife fell to the ground. But she didn't give up, her other hand clawing towards my face with sharp fingernails. With no other choice, I put all my strength into punching her straight in the face. Mina fell backward, her head hitting the ground. She lay unconscious, blood flowing from her nose. I immediately kicked the knife far away, and then shakily grabbed my phone to call the police and an ambulance. 15 minutes later, the ambulance and police arrived. The man was put on a stretcher. Luckily, he was still breathing. The unfortunate young woman was also taken away. Mina had regained consciousness. She was immediately handcuffed, then given medical attention and led away. When it was all over, I sat down on the roadside, breathless and covered in cold sweat. I felt an emptiness inside. I thought back on everything and felt incredibly unlucky. Here I was, heartbroken over my own relationship drama, only to stumble upon a deranged woman on the road. It truly was a case of the heartbroken meeting the psycho in love. But at least I could console myself that I had saved a life. My name is Joey. I've been a cop in this town of Llano, Texas for 12 years. I've seen some heavy things, but nothing haunts me more than the look in a 7-year-old girl's eyes. It was a weekend night, and the call came into dispatch at 9 p.m. A little girl's voice was shaking. She said, "My mommy says I'm going to stop breathing soon." My partner and I were in our patrol car nearby. We took the call immediately. While driving, I read the info from dispatch. The house belonged to Judith, 36. She was a single mom with a 7-year-old daughter named Carrie. We pulled up to a small house. A woman opened the door. Her face was flushed. She smelled strongly of booze, and her attitude was like a loaded gun. That was Judith. She didn't ask why we were there. She just started screaming. I didn't do anything wrong. She's making it up. She's just throwing a tantrum. I ignored her. I looked inside and saw a little girl hiding behind the sofa. She was clutching a small brown dog. Both of them were shivering. That was Carrie. Judith kept yelling and fighting every question we asked. Carrie just stood there, staring at us with terrified eyes. I decided I had to get that little girl away from her mother right then. I led Carrie and the dog to the patrol car while my partner dealt with Judith. As soon as she saw the dog, Bella, being taken, Judith lost it. You can't touch my dog. Bella's mine. Give her back right now. She didn't say a single word about her daughter. She only cared about the dog. My partner had to hold the mother back while I put Carrie in the car. The weather was pretty cold, so I turned the heater on for her. Inside the car, she sat in silence and stared at me for a long time. I could see bruises on her neck and small scratches on her arms. Then Carrie whispered, "Can Bella stay in the car too? She's scared of the cold." I nodded immediately. Once she was holding Bella, she relaxed a little and started talking. She told me that yesterday, her mom covered her mouth and told her she would stop breathing. She said her mom hated her. She told her she never wanted her in this world. Her voice was strangely calm. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. Carrie also said she didn't get dinner last night. She was starving, but she still had to sit and do her math homework. Then she looked down at the floor and whispered, "What did I do wrong that makes Mommy not love me?" I sat there in silence. I didn't know how to answer that. I watched her face and her eyes as she told her story. I watched how she petted Bella. She was such a warm, strong little girl. Outside, things were getting worse. Judith suddenly grabbed her chest and fell onto the porch. She screamed that she was having a heart attack and couldn't breathe. My partner called an ambulance right away. But when the paramedics arrived, she stood up like nothing happened. She brushed off her shirt and told them they weren't needed. She said it was all a misunderstanding. When we told Judith she was under arrest, her true face came out. She fought us hard. She was screaming at the top of her lungs. She kept calling us trash and saying we were ruining her family. While my partner was trying to cuff her, she intentionally turned and grabbed him in a private area. It didn't stop there. When we led her to the police car, she spat right in my face. We had to put a spit mask on her. Judith was taken to the station on charges of child endangerment and assaulting a police officer. I knew the legal process would take a long time, but at least Carrie was safe for the night. When things calmed down, I went back to the car. Carrie was still sitting there holding Bella and looking out the window. "Can you take me to Aunt Gigi's house? She loves me. She has cookies, and Bella likes it there too." I said yes. All the way there, Carrie sat next to me, still holding Bella tight. Sometimes she would whisper to the dog, trying to comfort her little friend. After a while, they both went quiet. I glanced over and saw Carrie leaning her head back against the seat, staring out the window. I wondered how a 7-year-old could be so calm after everything that happened. After about a 40-minute drive, we reached her aunt's house. Gigi hugged Carrie so gently and asked if she was okay. When she saw the bruises on Carrie's body, Gigi started crying. I felt a weight lift off my chest. She was safe. I got back to the station after midnight. I spent the rest of my shift writing the report, but my mind kept going back to Carrie holding Bella, and her question kept ringing in my head. What did I do wrong that makes Mommy not love me? Months later, I heard that Carrie was doing great living with Aunt Gigi. She goes to school, joined an art club, and most importantly, she is happy and energetic. The court officially gave custody to Aunt Gigi after deciding Judith was unfit to be a mother. She is serving her sentence and facing years of rehabilitation. Even though I was just a small part of Carrie's story, I am grateful I was there that night. I hope Carrie never has to ask why she isn't loved ever again. And for all the other children out there, I hope you get to grow up with love, safety, and a real childhood. When promises of love turn into a nightmare, I'm forced to fight to regain my life and control. I'm Beth, 32 years old. This story happened when I was living in Akron, Ohio. I had a very romantic time dating Kane. He was an engineer at a local company, had a steady income, and was polite to everyone. Kane proposed after 6 months of dating, and I immediately said yes. The first month of our marriage was truly like a paradise. Kane always took care of me, cooked and cleaned the house. He would often hug me from behind and whisper, "You're everything I need." I felt safe in his arms, believing we would grow old together in our small house in the Cleveland suburbs. Everything changed in the second month of our marriage. I woke up with a start to find Kane sitting on a chair next to the bed, holding a small pair of scissors. Scattered on the bed were strands of blonde hair. I immediately sat up. It was my hair. "Kane?" I asked, my voice trembling, my hands instinctively going to my head. One side of my hair had been cut short, close to the scalp. "Good morning, my love," Kane said, staring at me without blinking. "I've been sitting here all night watching you sleep. You sleep so beautifully, especially when I'm cutting your hair." "Why did you do that?" I almost screamed, my voice cracking as I was about to cry. Kane grinned, waving the scissors in his hand. "You look so much cuter now." "Now let's eat breakfast," Kane suddenly yelled. Before I could react, he shoved a large piece of bread into my mouth. I choked, trying to push his hand away, but Kane was stronger. He continued to force bread into my mouth. "Kane, stop." I tried to yell through the bread, but the sound was just an unintelligible groan. I couldn't breathe. My strength was fading, and my vision began to blur. Kane continued with an expression of delight. The last sound I heard was his insane laughter before everything went dark. I woke up, squinting at the bright lights. I was in a hospital. My throat was sore and dry. Kane sat on the chair next to my bed, his shoulders shaking. "Kane!" I thought he was crying until I saw his face. Kane was smiling, his eyes sparkling like a child who had just received their favorite gift. "You're awake?" he said, feigning concern. "If you're unconscious for too long, I can't play with you anymore, my love." He leaned close to my ear. "Next time you feel like you're about to pass out, let me know in advance. I'll let you rest for a bit." I shivered at my husband's attitude. "Why? Why did you do that?" Kane was silent for a moment, his eyes staring at me. Then he grinned again. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." I stared at Kane in disbelief. Was this really the man who had promised to protect me for the rest of my life? Why had he become like this? Just then, a doctor walked in and said the situation wasn't too serious, but still recommended I stay in the hospital for another night for observation. Kane immediately stood up and squeezed my shoulder tightly. "That's not necessary, doctor. My wife is fine. We're going home." Before I could say anything, Kane pulled me out of the hospital. The next few days were hell on earth. Kane no longer hid his true nature. Every morning I woke up, I didn't know what he would do. One time, he put a lot of salt in a glass and made me drink it all. Another time, he tied me to a chair and dripped cold water on my head for an hour. I tried to escape multiple times, but Kane always found me and dragged me back. He locked all the doors, hid the keys and my phone, and was always by my side to monitor me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I cried and threatened to call the police. Kane jumped up, his eyes bloodshot, and he yelled, "Shut up." Do you know how happy I am? Don't ruin my mood." In the next second, he calmed down, gently hugged me, and leaned close to my ear. His breath sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you for agreeing to marry me. Now I can play with you however I want. I've thought of so many fun ways to spend every day with you." "Why?" I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. Kane licked a tear from the corner of my eye, his smile turning insane. "You always smiled. I hated seeing that. From now on, I'll make you cry every day. Your tears are the most delicious thing to me." His insane laughter echoed through the room. I knew if I didn't act immediately, I would die in this house. I grabbed everything within reach, a table lamp, a wedding photo frame, a glass of water, and threw them hard at Kane's face. He staggered back, covering his face with his hands. That was my only chance. I ran to the window, opened it, and jumped out. It was my only option, because I was sure Kane had locked all the doors. Knowing the great risk, I jumped without a second thought. I landed on the first floor awning and then jumped again to the ground. The fall made me roll a few times, feeling pain all over my body. I heard Kane yelling for me to come back. There wasn't much time. I got up, limped to a neighbor's house, and asked for help. The neighbors called the police. I sobbed, telling the police everything, my body a clear and convincing piece of evidence. They immediately issued a temporary protective order and helped me with the divorce proceedings. The next month, I was treated in the hospital for a broken arm and shoulder and severe psychological trauma. At the trial, I wasn't present. I couldn't face Kane. Instead, I followed the trial online. It's a shame. I still have so many things I wanted to do with you. That was the only thing Kane said during the entire trial. I burst into tears, feeling utterly disgusted. What shocked me even more was that after the divorce, I found out Kane had been married before. His first wife had taken her own life. The police concluded it was depression, but the truth behind her death was probably also due to Kane's insanity and cruelty. Kane wasn't looking for a life partner. He was looking for a toy to satisfy his brutality. After 2 years of psychological therapy, I can finally sleep soundly without waking up with a start. I've moved to Columbus and started a new life. I understand that freedom and peace are the most precious things, but not in the arms of or dependent on someone else. They are within myself. I've been in this cell for 3 years now, and every morning when I wake up, I still feel the dull ache in my left eye. They say I'm lucky to be alive, but sometimes I wonder if death would truly have been worse than living with this memory. It all started in the spring of 2021. I'm Mike, a police officer with the Columbus Police Department, Ohio. My girlfriend was Kate, the daughter of State Senator Robert Williams. We met at a charity fundraising event. Initially, everything was perfect. Kate was smart, funny, and had big dreams of becoming a journalist. As our relationship deepened, Kate began to show the first signs of being controlling. We didn't live together, and the calls happened at any time of day Kate wanted. Our dates turned into interrogations. Kate wanted to know every detail of my workday, about female colleagues, reasons why I stayed late. When I was tired and didn't want to talk, she would sit in terrifying silence, staring. I felt like I was living under a microscope. I felt incredibly suffocated and started to become unhappy with the relationship. I decided to end things with Kate after almost 8 months of dating. We met. I talked about needing time to focus on my career. "I think we should break up." Then she laughed. I left, thinking that was the end of it, but it wasn't. That night at 1 a.m., Kate called me. She was sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to reconsider. I apologized and hung up. By morning, my phone had nearly 100 missed calls from Kate. I sat staring at my phone screen for a long time, feeling an overwhelming sense of suffocation, and decided to remain silent. The following days were like a nightmare I had created myself. Kate called nonstop, sending hundreds of texts a day. She came to my house, banging on the door until 2 a.m. Then Kate started to harm herself. Cuts on her wrists, bruises on her body. She sent me terrifying photos with messages. "Do you see what you've done to me?" Then Senator Williams began to intervene. A week after I broke up with Kate, he called the police chief directly. I was called into the office and received advice that perhaps I should reconsider my relationship with Senator Williams' daughter, for the good of your career. When I refused, the pressure started to mount. My promotion application was deferred for further review. My work schedule was suddenly filled with night shifts. Important cases were assigned to others. Even at home, I found no peace. My electricity and water bills suddenly had mistakes. My bank reviewed my account unusually. I understood the message: get back with Kate, or my life would be destroyed. I couldn't call the police because I was the police, and the person oppressing me held power. I couldn't tell anyone for fear of jeopardizing my career. I was surrounded by choices I had made myself, but now compounded by the force of political power. I tried to endure, thinking that if I just kept silent, everything would eventually be okay. But I was wrong. Nearly 4 months after I definitively broke up with Kate, she still wouldn't give up. Every time I finished a night shift, my car would have a new scratch. My mailbox was full of scribbled papers with angry and sad faces. I still chose silence and endurance. I started losing sleep. My colleagues were worried, but I just told them I was tired and stressed, partly due to caffeine side effects. But deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. Work was the only thing still keeping me connected to the normal world. Then one evening, while preparing for a raid to apprehend a drug trafficking group at a suburban warehouse, I saw a figure in the distance near a restricted area. I couldn't clearly see her face, but her walk was unmistakable. "Kate!" I rushed out, shouting for her to stop. One of the officers with me held me back, saying I was mistaken. I returned to my position, but my mind couldn't focus. All my senses were on edge. I had warned dispatch about the possibility of civilians entering the area, but no one really paid attention. About 10 minutes after the raid began, screams for help echoed from the back of the warehouse. I ran there with 2 others, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw Kate being held by one of the gang members, a knife pressed to her throat. Everything swirled inside me. Why was she here? I raised my gun, but my hand trembled, sweat drenching my palm. Kate cried as she called my name. "Mike, I don't want to die. Don't leave me." The more I heard Kate's voice, the more my heart raced, my mind unable to focus. I felt like I was pushed to the edge of an abyss, with only darkness below. My head reeled. For months, I had tried to endure, but the harder I tried, the more I felt like someone was suffocating me day by day. "I'm scared. Mike, you can't leave me. You made me like this." I gasped for breath, my vision blurring. Only Kate's voice remained in my head, and an overwhelming feeling of suffocation as I was pushed to my limit. The gunshot echoed. A few seconds later, Kate fell. Everything suddenly became eerily quiet. There was only the pounding of my heart and a sense of emptiness. The kidnapper was subdued immediately after the shot. My teammates rushed in, disarmed him, and cuffed him to the ground. A clear, all clear, sounded over the radio, confirming the operation was over. But I couldn't hear clearly anymore. I knelt beside Kate, blood spreading beneath her body, my hand still clutching the gun. I woke up in the hospital, handcuffed. I was charged with murder. State Senator Williams said I would definitely pay the highest price. No one mentioned how the months of suffering had affected my mental state. My desperate pleas went unheard. 3 years have passed, and the memory remains like an unhealed wound. I don't blame Kate. I only blame myself for not stopping when I could have. I thought silence was the least damaging path, but I was wrong. And now I have to live with that mistake for the rest of my life. It's been a week, and the bruises still haven't completely faded. I have to wear long sleeves and pants to cover my arms and legs whenever I go out. No one has asked, and I don't want any attention, don't want to explain anything. My boyfriend David and I have lived together for 3 years in a 2-bedroom apartment in suburban Buffalo, New York. 3 years of watching him transform from a warm, caring man into an obsession. When he's sober, David is still the boyfriend with the charming smile. But when he's had a few drinks, he becomes a completely different person. At first, it was just punching walls, breaking kitchen cabinet doors, throwing the TV remote. I'd comfort myself by thinking, at least, he's not touching me. David always apologized afterward. Those self-assurances have sustained me for the past 3 years, slowly helping me accept each dangerous sign. But last week's incident made me realize the nightmare was just truly beginning. It was last weekend. Sarah, my best friend from college, invited me out for drinks at our usual bar. I'd refused many times because David didn't like me going out alone. But this time, I agreed. I needed to get out to escape these negative thoughts. Just an hour, Sarah's moving to Portland soon. This might be the last time we can see each other. I said to David as he sat on the sofa, opening his 4th beer of the afternoon. David looked at me, his blue eyes starting to glaze over from the alcohol. Fine, but be back before 10 o'clock. I was thrilled and eager. The bar was pretty crowded. We found a spot near the bar, laughing and talking about memories, about her new job in Portland. It had been so long since I felt this relaxed and free. Would 2 beautiful ladies care for a drink? A man's voice made us turn around. He was about 30, wearing a collared shirt, his hair neatly gelled. In his hands, he held 2 beautiful cocktails. Thank you, we don't. I started to decline. Don't be like that, Anna. It's free. Sarah cut me off. She had already taken the cocktail before I could stop her. The man handed the second glass to me with a friendly smile. I'm Marcus. Just wanted to wish you 2 a good evening. I hesitated for a few seconds, then took the drink. In my head, David's voice echoed. Men never offer free drinks without an agenda. But Marcus had already turned away, not seeming to want to continue the conversation. Sarah was already drinking her cocktail and kept saying how good it was. I took a sip. The sweet taste of pineapple gently spread across my tongue. We quickly returned to our interrupted conversation. About 15 minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was David calling. Where are you? I quickly glanced at my watch. It was only 9:30. I'm at the bar with Sarah. Come home right now. But you said 10. Anna. The way David said my name made my blood run cold. I hung up. Sarah looked at me with worried eyes. Is something wrong? I have to go home. David's waiting. I stood up, grabbing my purse. I left Sarah with a confused look and rushed out of the bar. My head was spinning. I couldn't tell if it was from the cocktail or from my overwhelming fear. David was already standing outside the bar, his face filled with rage. Seeing his expression made me flinch. I wondered if David had seen Marcus hand me the drink. He didn't say a word, opened the car door, and gestured for me to get in. I sat in the passenger seat, feeling his anger radiate from his entire body. David drove out of the parking lot at a normal speed, but when we got onto the main road, he floored the gas pedal. The speedometer needle kept climbing. David, didn't you remember what I said? He just wanted to wish us a good evening. The car swerved past another vehicle, tires screeching on the pavement. I gripped the door handle tightly, unable to say anything else. We arrived at the apartment in tense silence. As soon as we stepped inside the apartment, David spun around and grabbed me by the collar. You think I'm an idiot? His eyes were bloodshot, his beer-laced breath hot on my face. I had never seen David so out of control. David, I didn't. Shut up, he yelled and shook my shoulders violently. Tears started to stream down my cheeks, but David didn't seem to see them or didn't care. He dragged me across the living room, pushing me onto the sofa. 3 years I've taken care of you, given you free housing. And this is how you repay me? He yelled, punching the wall hard. The sound made me flinch. My whole body trembled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Inside me, a small voice whispered that this wasn't my fault, but that voice was too weak compared to David's yelling. What happened next was too fast. At one point, I felt myself being pulled up. At another, I heard David's voice near my ear, hot and full of rage. Continuous pain in my chest, stomach, even my face. When it was all over, I sat alone on the living room floor, my back against the sofa. David had gone into the kitchen. I heard him open a beer can. I looked down at my wrists. Dark purple bruises were forming. And that's when a brutal truth hit me. I couldn't leave here. My bank account never had more than $100. My parents were far away. They couldn't help. I had few friends, and I had cut ties with most of them because of David. I was trapped, completely trapped in this life with him in this apartment. David knew it. He always reminded me of my dependence. He completely controlled me. That night, when David was drunk and passed out, I lay next to him in bed, feeling every ache from my injuries. I stared at the ceiling until dawn broke, wondering if there was any way to escape this hell. My name's Monica. I'm 22. I love myself, and yeah, I'm confident in my own skin. My friends always say I'm pretty easy on the eyes. I used to live in a rougher neighborhood. But once my parents' business started picking up, we moved into a decent middle-class home. The area was great, quiet, clean, and mostly full of folks who didn't look like us. We stood out, sure, but people were chill. They welcomed us. I've got this habit. I swipe on Tinder more often than I'd like to admit. Most of my friends, I actually met them through the app, and honestly, they turned out to be cool, but I'd never had an actual thing from Tinder. That is, until I matched with Brian. This guy? Drop-dead gorgeous. Tall, built, curly brown hair, piercing blue eyes. The first time we met up, my heart was pounding like crazy. He gave me this once-over, not in a creepy way, more like he was surprised and into it. Then he spoke. Instant jelly. I'd never felt that way about anyone before. We started bumping into each other all the time, not like planned dates, more like weird coincidences. Coffee shops, parks, the gym. Everywhere I went, boom, there he was. One day he casually mentioned we lived in neighboring areas. Thing is, I don't remember telling him where I lived. But honestly, I didn't care. He was hot enough to make me forget everything else. So yeah, we officially had our first real date as a couple. He picked me up like a total gentleman and even came inside to say hi to my parents. They were totally charmed. Couldn't stop smiling at him. Midway through the date, Brian said he forgot something at his place and asked if I wanted to swing by with him. But the moment we stepped inside, everything just blew up. I was barely through the door when I heard a woman screaming from inside the house, "Intruder! Intruder!" I freaked out and grabbed onto Brian's arm like my life depended on it. Then this woman stormed in from the hallway, furious, wild-eyed. She looked just like Brian, so yeah, I figured it had to be his mom. Just shoved me away from him, pushed me out the door, slammed it in my face. I stood there, totally thrown. Brian rushed out right after trying to calm the situation, but his mom was going off. She started smacking his chest and yelling, "She's not the kind of girl you deserve." Yeah, I got the message loud and clear. I turned away before she could see my eyes welling up. On the drive back, Brian kept apologizing, non-stop. He was scrambling to explain why his mom acted like that, and just kept saying sorry over and over. I knew it wasn't his fault. The date itself was actually great. It's just the whole apology overload kind of made things awkward. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents anything, because honestly, I still really liked him. A lot. After that, Brian and I kept texting, kept meeting up, and the more time we spent together, the closer we got. One day, Brian and I made plans to meet up during my lunch break. Everything was fine, until his face suddenly changed after checking a text. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom. She said she just drove by and saw us. She's really pissed." At that point, I wasn't even worried about her. Honestly, I was just annoyed. He's a grown-ass man. Why the hell was she still all up in his business? We shrugged it off and kept sipping our coffee. until she actually showed up. Brian's mom walked right in, smiling at me like she was doing it just to mess with me. Then, out of nowhere, she threw something at me. It was in a tied-up bag, but the smell hit me before it even landed. Brian and I looked at each other, both frozen. He jumped up to stop her. I looked down at the bag. It was shit. This woman had just thrown a literal bag of feces at me. I was beyond done. I stood up and walked out, furious. Brian ran after me, trying to explain, apologizing like crazy. I ignored everything that day. No calls, no texts, no FaceTime. I was seriously pissed that Brian hadn't set things straight with his mom about us. That evening, when I walked out of the office, her car was parked right next to mine. She got out and told me to stay away from Brian. I told her she should probably have that conversation with her son too. Then I got in my car and drove off, leaving her standing there, staring at me with that same nasty look in her eyes. When I got home, my phone started buzzing with texts. Unknown number. All threats. Creepy, specific stuff about me and my family. I didn't respond. I just called Brian, told him everything, and I said we shouldn't see each other anymore. His mom had crossed the line. Brian said he'd talk to her and that he'd wait for me, no matter how long it took. The next morning, I woke up to my mom screaming. My dad and I ran to the porch, and what we saw stopped us cold. 3 dead birds lined up. Next to them, a note with just 3 words. Mom. Dad. Monica. My dad looked at me furious and demanded I tell him what was going on. So I did. I told him everything. My parents called the cops. They went to Brian's place, but his mom denied it all. Worse, she turned around and said I'd been harassing her son. I showed the police my text with Brian, laid it all out. They took notes, logged the threats, and said they'd follow up. That night, the strange number messaged me again. It's over. I replied, What do you mean? These threats didn't scare me. The next day, on my way to work, I noticed a black car parked in front of my office. When I opened the door and stepped out of my car, I heard footsteps running behind me. Suddenly, a strong force grabbed me from behind, covering my mouth so I couldn't scream. The last thing I remember was being thrown into a car. When I woke up, I found myself in a hotel room, still fully dressed, thank God. Brian's mom was standing at the door of the hotel room with 2 of her henchmen. An evil smile was on her face, the woman looking elegant but cruel. I faced her. Why did you do this? She screamed, almost insane. You're not worthy. You ugly duckling. You don't deserve my son and my family. Anger exploded inside me. I straightened up, firm, determined to maintain my confidence and pride. I don't need your approval. I know my worth, and I won't let anyone hurt me. When she lunged at me, I shoved her away and ran toward the door, but her 2 strong henchmen immediately blocked me. I didn't hesitate. I bit, fought like a wild animal. I used all my strength to break free, and finally I did. I ran out of the room, sprinting down the hallway. My heart was pounding like thunder, and I quickly grabbed my phone to call the police. Just as I ended the call, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I couldn't react in time, and fainted. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. My parents were standing next to me, their faces worried, and even Brian was there. He looked at me with regret, constantly apologizing. I couldn't hear anymore. I looked at him, feeling sadness and disappointment. I can't continue with you, I said, my voice cold and firm. Thank you for what you've done, but I can't be in a relationship like this. I didn't need to explain further. What I felt, he would never understand. Brian just stood there, silent, saying nothing more. I didn't need any more apologies from him. I knew I had done the right thing. There are some sounds you never forget once you hear them. For me, the humming of the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window in the middle of the night is one of them. 15 years have passed, but every time I hear that tune, I still shiver as I remember that night. It was the summer I turned 8. My parents were busy with their work schedules, so they decided to send me to my grandparents' house in Burnett, Texas. I was going to stay there for 3 weeks. My grandparents lived in a small wooden house surrounded by a forest. Living with them was their helper, Aunt May, who assisted with chores around the house. The first few nights at my grandparents' house, I couldn't sleep. Everything was unfamiliar, from the smell of wood to the sound of cicadas buzzing outside. A few nights later, a new sound joined the others, a faint rattling outside my window. I pulled my blanket up, leaving only my eyes exposed, telling myself it was just the wind blowing against the window. After a while, it disappeared, and I drifted off to sleep. I still thought it was a normal sound around here, so I didn't mention it to my grandparents. The next morning, my grandpa took me and our dog for a walk. We walked along the trail that led into the woods behind the house. Our dog suddenly stopped, her fur bristling on her back, and started to growl towards a bush. "What is it, Cora?" Grandpa asked. I looked in the same direction and saw a figure standing still behind a large pine tree. I blinked a few times, thinking I was imagining things, but the figure remained there, just standing still and watching. "Grandpa, there's someone over there." But when we looked again, the figure had vanished. The dog continued to growl. "Could be a lost hunter," Grandpa said, and that made sense to me. That night, after watching Cyber Chase, I went to my room early. After talking to my parents on the phone, I got into bed to play my game console. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by a strange sound. Someone was humming the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window. I pulled the covers over my head, scared, and just lay still. When the song ended, I slowly pulled the blanket down. "Grandpa," I called out to him. "Hey, it's me. Come out here, grandson. I want to show you something cool." Maybe he couldn't sleep and wanted to show me the stars or some wild rabbits coming out to feed at night, things he often told me about. I climbed out of bed, opened the window, and looked outside. A figure stood in the dark, reaching out a hand. "Let's go, kid." I took that hand and followed. We walked a few steps on the dirt road, heading toward the forest. I felt a bit strange because Grandpa wasn't saying anything, nor did he turn to look at me as usual. The moonlight grew brighter, and I looked down at the hand holding mine. This wasn't Grandpa's hand. His hand was more wrinkled. I also smelled a strong scent of tobacco, even though my grandpa didn't smoke. I saw something black sticking out from the back of his waistband. It looked like a gun. I slowed down, terrified. Immediately, I felt a tight grip and was pulled forward. Just then, Grandpa's familiar voice rang out from the direction of the house. "Ethan! Ethan, where are you?" I immediately stopped dead. The man flinched, turning his head towards the house. In that moment of distraction, I quickly yanked my hand free and ran back towards the house. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" I screamed as I ran. Grandpa was standing on the porch, all the outdoor lights shining brightly. I rushed to him and hugged him tight. "Where have you been?" "What's wrong?" There was a man. I thought it was you, but it wasn't," I said. Grandpa held me close, then looked out towards the woods. Everything was just darkness now. Grandma and Aunt May also woke up because of the noise. Grandpa called the police immediately. They arrived and started searching the surrounding area. It didn't take long for them to find a man hiding in a drainage ditch over 300 feet from our house. The police also found a gun tucked into his pants. The man's name was Rick. He was Aunt May's ex-boyfriend. They had broken up a few weeks before I came to stay with my grandparents. Rick had followed Aunt May here and planned to kidnap me to force her to get back together with him. I didn't mean to hurt the boy. I just wanted May to understand that she needed me, Rick told the police. But the guns he had prepared told a different story. My parents drove all night to come pick me up. Although Aunt May had done nothing wrong, my grandparents felt they had to let her go. From then on, my parents rearranged their work schedules to spend more time with me. I still visit my grandparents every summer and during long breaks. I'm grateful that Grandpa woke up to use the bathroom that night and found me not in my room. If it hadn't been for his call, I can't imagine what would have happened in the woods that night with a man carrying a gun, determined to get what he wanted. I used to think a breakup was the end, but with Joe, it was just the beginning of something much scarier. It's been almost 3 years, and I still tremble whenever I remember that party. I can't sleep on quiet nights. The sound of the gunshots still echoes in my ears, and the screams still haunt me. In July of that year, I was invited to Jordan's graduation party. Jordan was our class president, and the party was at their house. I was pretty hesitant before accepting the invitation. I wasn't close to anyone in my class, worried that I wouldn't know what to say when I got there. But remembering my past relationship with my ex-boyfriend, Joe, I had lost so much freedom, so many relationships, and so much confidence. I had ended that control, and now it was time to get it all back. I arrived at the party, standing by the drink table, feeling a little awkward. Liz, right? I turned to see Jordan smiling. Jordan was tall and thin, with slightly curly brown hair and kind blue eyes. Hi, Jordan. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad you came. You don't seem to go to parties very often. I nodded, unsure what to say. Jordan didn't ask further, just handed me a glass of orange juice. Do you want to go upstairs? It's a bit noisy down here. I hesitated a moment, then nodded. We went up to the second floor, into a small living room with a sofa and bookshelves packed with books. Jordan sat down, keeping a comfortable distance. We talked about college, about future plans. Jordan listened to me genuinely. I looked at Jordan, feeling my heart beat faster. There was something about them that made me feel safe. It was a feeling I had forgotten long ago. Liz, where are you? A shout from downstairs startled me. It was Joe's voice. My body froze, my hands began to tremble. Jordan looked at me with a bewildered expression. That's Joe, my ex-boyfriend I broke up with a few weeks ago. He's dangerous. Jordan placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. They told me to stay put, and then quickly went downstairs to handle the situation. But I couldn't sit still. I ran after Jordan. The noise and shouting from downstairs grew louder. When I reached the living room, I saw Joe there, his face flushed, his hands clenched. When he saw me, his eyes became wild. Jordan stepped forward, blocking him between me and Joe. You need to leave. This is my private home and you're not invited, Jordan said in a firm voice. But Joe completely ignored them, his eyes fixed only on me. Come home right now. I shook my head. Joe stepped closer, his face distorted with rage. The heavy smell of alcohol radiated from him. You belong to me. Jordan still stood between me and Joe, clearly showing a protective stance. Joe reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a shiny black handgun. My blood ran cold. Jordan flinched but still didn't move. Screams erupted from behind me. Everyone rushed out in a panic. Joe pointed the gun at Jordan. I lunged between them, but Jordan pushed me behind their back. They raised their hands, trying to calm Joe. We can talk. But Joe had lost all reason. He didn't let Jordan finish, and he suddenly pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed. Jordan fell. The bullet lodged in their right shoulder. Blood poured out nonstop. Jordan's face was pale with pain. I felt like I died for a few seconds, then quickly knelt beside Jordan, pressing hard on the wound to stop the bleeding. Joe seemed to go insane. He lunged, grabbed my hair tightly and pulled hard, ordering me to go with him. I struggled. Just then, the distant wail of police sirens filled the air. Someone had called the police. Joe looked around for an escape route, then ran. Paramedics rushed in. They bandaged Jordan's wound and got them into the ambulance. I followed closely. Joe was arrested by the police not long after, while trying to escape. At the hospital, surgeons removed the bullet from Jordan's shoulder. Luckily, the bullet didn't cause severe damage. I sat in the waiting room all night, staring at the white walls and feeling guilty. The trial took place a month later. Joe was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 3 years in prison. but no sentence could erase the trauma and haunting memories. Jordan recovered. We still kept in touch, but there was a distance we both felt. I understand that true love never comes with control, possession, or violence. What Joe had for me wasn't love. It was an obsession with control. It took me too long to realize that. I'm still learning to live with those memories, but I know that silence only makes people like Joe more dangerous. So I decided to tell this story, hoping it will help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. That graduation party ended, but the lessons from it will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.